light and can redefine the entire model of modern physics, including the issue of quantum superposition to a newer height and play of newer set of questions and reality which may have lost in say 100 years from now. These things taken, I must put one thing, that the material condition is dependent on the collective nature, and the collective nature is not dependent on our sweet will. The things that we are putting on succumbing to the powerful body of policy makers, policy promoters that we are putting ourselves. Wartime technologies definitely help us a lot in our civilizational growth. That is a self-destructive edifice that almost always delete and abrogate the few amount of positive addition to the domain of science by destroying the core of civilization. Say for example, we have no answer how we can control the management of the radioactive wastage till now. We have no answer and how we can stop the conversions of scientificity into overt institutionalization of policy making. Therefore, in India, in technological parlance, each year around 1 million babies between 0 and 5 years of age die because they don't have access to potable drinking water. India is contemplating to send an expedition to Mars by 2060. We are making rocket science. We are piercing the space. We are calculating the intergalactic emissions. But we are not putting enough amount of people to ask and to understand the beauty, the intrinsic beauty and the dynamics of science and technology as a human project. I would conclude my conclusion with a quote from a famously known but many times misunderstood social activist, economist, and philosopher. He says that people make their own history, but they do not make it just as they please. They do not make it under circumstances chosen by themselves, but under circumstances directly encountered, given, and transmitted from the past. I am quoting from 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte, written by Karl Marx. And this shows when Foucault was talking about the dialectics of science, it is just not the negation of negation. It is just not about the thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. It is a simplistic interpretation. It is also about unity of opposites and from quantitative accumulation and jump to quality shift. Well, we're ready ourselves for kind of paradigm shift in the journey of science and technology, where it can really address the issue of knowledge to understand ourselves better as an embedded creature of nature. Thank you. Now, before we wrap up with a cup of tea, I invite my beloved dear Professor Ruben Bhushan.
Yes. So, I just would like to tell you a small story about Einstein, but he never believed that quantum mechanics is correct. So, with Niels Bohr in an argument, he once said that God does not play dice, because quantum mechanics is probabilistic description of nature. And Niels Bohr got annoyed. He said, "Don't tell God what to do." Because let God play gamble. God is not a gambler, but he said if God wants to be a gambler, let him be a gambler. Don't tell God what to do. And about fire, as he said, fire was an absolutely accidental discovery of the highest order. But maybe most of you do not know that lighter came in the market much before matchstick. Look up the history. The lighter came first and matchstick came later. But those lighters are dangerous. One had to carry sulfuric acid in the pocket. In a bottle. You dip something, then there will be pain.
Before the Thanksgiving question, please, I solicit that you ask questions and don't feel shy. There are teachers of all of us. So you ask question, we also ask question today. So please ask question and ask in.
You don't expect the answer.
Yeah.
Because we do. But it is not open, closed in the sense that Newton's law was escape and Newton's law explain everything about motion.
And also from the statement of Professor Bandopadhyay that it is a continuum process, and for each and every step we can get to a new set of higher how, what, and why. So how can we say that it is a the question of zero tolerance. It is always.
I can in USA, George Bush said that evolutionary theory will not be taught in every school. And Richard Dawkins just threw away George Bush by saying, look, this is not two sides of the same story. They are two different stories. So don't tell this is both sides of the same story. You cannot have creationist theory and evolutionary theory. You see, so science is, you have to talk evolutionary theory and there are lots of evolutionary theory. Yes, you can teach all the evolutionary theory because nothing is correct. Everything is science. Everything is trying to approach the correct thing. But creationist theory is not a part of science. So that is what he meant by zero tolerance. That don't mix up science with non-scientific things. There must be zero tolerance. But science is not absolute. Science, there are different avenues. They can argue. Then they argue, they improve, something new comes. But that is not also not ultimate. There will be again argument, then there will be again byproduct. That's what he meant by zero tolerance. That don't mix up science with non-scientific things. That must be zero tolerance.
So when we decide the non-science, deciding that this is a pseudoscience, this is not a science, the science should be properly defined, and science can always be questioned. And Professor Bandopadhyay also told that science is probably the thing which is not scientific in this. So science is probably the only thing.
That doesn't claim. That's what I said. No? Einstein said that science is the only thing we have.
So how do we say that this is pseudoscience?
That you have to have a principle, you have to have experiment to support your theory, and you can, the best thing of science that it can change. It can change. Pseudoscience is nothing can change. You know, this particular stone will save me on Tuesday. There will be no change. You cannot argue. If you are allowed to argue, no, this stone will be really useful on Friday, then maybe that will be part of science.
Also, I outlined that what are the characteristics of science? Like it has to be objective. Objective in the sense, first thing it studies the material world. So anything outside this material world means including ourselves, whatever Cyrus told, that is correct. I mean, even our thought process, etc., that is also part of that material world. I'm not saying, but something which is supernatural, that means by its term, we are attributing that it is not part of this nature. Its existence is not accepted, but still, we have to study it. Now, science does not accept that domain. It always considers a study which has material existence. In some material ways, it has existence, relevance in that. And then secondly, you cannot just say with your psychological framework, okay, only this part is not deviating, this part is deviating, so please accept my proof. Now science does not allow that. If it accepts that, then actually it has to change all those framework. So either you should do that, that means you make it consistent. Unless you make it consistent, you don't accept the whole thing. So there is an interrelationship between all this theory. And third part, as I mentioned, systematic study. Suddenly some claim has been made, and it has no history, and it looks very random, very discrete. Now who should be now? So why I mentioned, because these are certain characteristics on the surface. At least you can judge, and you try to find whether it is satisfying. Objectivity is the primary characteristics, and also that for issues.
What do you mean? I have seen it with my own eyes, so I can prove it. I said, what is that? How does it prove? I mean, you have seen it with your own eyes, there is no proof.
Yeah.
Because they don't have any idea about what a proof is. Like our greatest mathematician, Ramanujan, he was one of the greatest mathematicians the world has ever produced in the history of math. But he didn't have any idea what is a mathematical proof.
No.
He had to be taught by Hardy and Littlewood that what is a proof? You know left hand side equal to right hand side. You are a magician. It is correct, but that is not a proof.
Yeah.
There are all.
So proof is something, but proceed. And hence in India, 2004 is the report of Scientific Advisory Committee to Prime Minister. So they have given a big photograph of all the big scientists of India who have produced.
One of you said that Einstein said that we cannot understand the nature completely, or we cannot know about nature completely. But I have heard something new from that Vishwakapu is a scientist. That I heard from him that he said that we are not now understanding nature. We are changing the nature. We are trying to what do I say? We are trying to optimize the nature's law by like we are making now synthetic legs. We are making synthetic organs. So we are doing some what is it?
I understand your question. Yes. That we think human beings are outside nature. You know, we are dividing nature and humans. So human is trying to conquer nature, human is trying to alter nature, human is trying to do something to the nature, as if we human beings are not a part of the nature. That is totally wrong. Just like an elephant, if it is a part of the nature, then how am I not a part of nature? So if my brain functions and tries to make an artificial leg, I mean, you know what I am saying? That a part of nature is trying to change a part of nature. Don't think human beings are changing the nature. So do not think human beings are outside nature.
Those things they cannot help us, but at the same time, when some science cannot give, those rings can give. So we can infer that spirituality can give a person satisfaction when science cannot give satisfaction. But at the same time, inventions.
Inventions, I tell you that the industry is telling this is good for you. Actually, it's very bad for us. So they are selling it. I am not having any conflict between science and religion. Religion is not a competitor of science. Science never claims that it produces happiness, it produces mental peace, nothing like that. Science is an inquiry to understand, trying to understand nature, including ourselves, as I said. We are not outside the nature. Like when we do brain research, and that is very funny, you see. That is my personal feeling. I am not quoting from anybody. I think to understand something, you have to see it from outside. You cannot be inside the system to understand the system. That's why this understanding the consciousness or understanding the whole functioning of brain, this is a scientific value. But this will be a limiting process. It will just continue to improve. I don't think there will be an end at somewhere. That yes, everything is known. That will be the death knell of science, if you ever believe that.
Regarding science and religion. Actually, the question is that whether the religious or questioning these scientific facts, there lies a contradiction. So definitely there you have to always consider that what kind of objectivity by which the study is made. Now usually it is fine, I mean, that is why science is objective. So on the question of that, definitely there is contradiction and there will be conflict also, because why this evolution is wrong. Evolutionary theory is wrong. And this is how our world is created and you should accept it. Why? It is not purely philosophical, as you mentioned. It's a kind of our social establishment, the way different sections are getting benefited out of that kind of outlook. So all these processes are there. So in that way, always there will be contradiction not only with religion. Religion is an example, but there are many other scientific, non-scientific thoughts, which is not part of that science, and still those practices are going on. And just to keep that interest, yes, that would be there. Now, regarding personal satisfaction, emotional satisfaction, etc. Now, as Professor Mulli correctly pointed out, science does not claim that its theory will be giving those things.
Very few scientists are considered greater than Newton. But he stopped doing science at the age of 56. He lived till 85, 84 plus. But from 56 onwards, the last 30 years, you know what he was doing? Alchemy. What is he doing to prove that as written in the Old Testament, that universe was created 4,000 years before the birth of Christ. So that was all he did. So do not think, science is a separate thing. It is part of human activity. There are lots of human activities like religion is one, politics is one, science is like another. So science should be compared only with science, not with something else. And everything affects everything. Religion affected science, As he said, Bruno was burned to death. Galileo was interned in his house, and Galileo had to still write the book. That is science. though he has interned in his house, he still wrote the book and sent it to Holland for publishing because it could not be published in India. So that is the attitude of science.
So may I have the permission why science cannot give us the satisfaction? Then if I have the privilege to answer it, if on this time today, if we just want to justify what is science, it is basically a question mark. It is never satisfied. Satisfaction is non-scientific, and non-satisfaction is what science. It always asks the question. It is very
Science gives the maximum satisfaction to a scientist. Newton did not eat for
one of the aspects of science is objective. But the thing is that we, the way we understand an object is subjective. I mean, all of us, whenever we are objects and we relate to another object, we do it subjectively. So how can it be purely objective?
Acknowledge its material existence. Yeah, acknowledge its material existence. That is the kind of objectivity here. It should be observable, it should be measurable.
I mean, we interpret every object.
That is okay, but then it is subjective in your own way, fashion.
So that interpretation.
That is one thing, but when you are to consider that how to make it more objective. So otherwise you cannot discuss. So if you say, okay, I thought this is, I experienced this, then of course you don't accept it as science. Just purely your feelings will be accepted. Therefore, your feelings will be accepted. So that is what I
so
say.
maybe it's not my feelings, but maybe it's the feelings of
Demonstrate in other some facts and figures with some experimental methodology. You have to show that thing. This is what this is.
needs to understand what is the fundamental entity of material. Ultimately, there is no fundamental particle, it is string.
Yeah.
And string in a 10-dimensional space, which is all mathematics.
But at the same time, it has to be validated. Time and again, to taste.
who made thee, dost thou know who made thee? So that's the question that is elicited to perhaps God, and the way in which the poem runs, it gives the impression that man is deriving a lot of comfort and happiness out of its interaction with nature. But Blake printed his poem in such a manner that he always looked at two sides of the question. The other poem on the opposite side of the page is called The Tiger, in which the symbol is actually the beginning of the discovery of fire and the way in which it is being put to use, especially in the smithy.